This is very meta, and it has to be for this type of format because we're talking about talking. So I have a very small point, but to make it, I kind of had to do what I'm trying to tell you to do. So the difference between having a point and telling a story. So you have something that you want to say, but you have to convey it to the audience in some way. And this can be very difficult. So I have 3 examples from talks that I've done, and I'll try to deconstruct the technique that I used in each one. So the first one we're going to look at is a talk I did a few years ago. And here I'm using a metaphor to create the language that I'm going to use in the talk. So the talk is called Trying to Learn C#. It's a very weird talk because I didn't know C# when I submitted the talk, so I had to learn C# to do the talk, and so I talk about that process. It's a very strange thing. It was an extremely hard talk to do for me, and in it I used words from learning a natural language. So I went and I found, how do we talk about learning languages in general, like learning natural languages, and then I used those kinds of words to describe learning C#. And so I'll show you some examples from that talk. So there's a word in Norwegian called frokost. And there's also a word in Danish called frokost, but said with a Danish accent. And in Norwegian, it means breakfast. And in Danish, it means lunch, which makes it extremely confusing all the time. Basically, either way you go, you don't know what meal you're talking about. And it's clear, and what really hurts it is that it is very clear from the context that you're talking about a meal, but it's very easy to get confused about which meal we're actually discussing at this point. And this is because it's kind of coming from the same kind of language background, but the meaning of it has drifted. And this can mean that you think you understand what the person is saying, but it actually means something totally different than you think. And this happens in programming languages as well. So I'll show you 2 examples. So here we have list in Java. And in Java, it's called list, but there's also a thing in C# called list. Unfortunately, in Java, this is some kind of abstract thing. It could actually mean some kind of linked list. And in C#, this is what we would call a vector, or what you in Java would call an array list, right? Which is confusing when you read it the first time because you don't know what it is. What is a list? Like, what is the underlying implementation? So here we have like a drift in meaning. It means different things in different languages, and you have to figure out what does it mean in this context. And here it is the same word because it came from the same place, but it doesn't mean the same thing. And you kind of have to figure that out in learning a programming language. And so you had one that was fun, is that they have something that they call namespaces. So in my talk, I have this little thing in the corner, and that is like the language I was thinking of when I was learning this thing in C#. So how did I try to understand it? So here's an example from C#, where they have something that kind of looks like a namespace, right? But it's actually not like a namespace at all. And so now I have to figure out what it actually means. And so this is all I'm going to show you from this talk. It's on YouTube. But the point is here, I used the metaphor of learning a natural language and mapped it to learning a programming language. Okay, so then I have a different talk that I did recently at Aku. And here I tried to illustrate time by using popular culture. And so the talk was called Classic Vulnerabilities. And I used popular culture because I wanted to remind people how long ago something was. And so I wanted to, oh yeah, I remember that song, or, so to give people a feel for how long ago something was, because that was a big point in the talk to illustrate that a lot of time has passed since something. So I had these 2 ecosystems that I was talking about. So you had systems programming and binary exploitation, and then I had these timelines. And so we're going back to 2000 and then all the way up to 2022. But this is very abstract. Like people have 22 years. Okay, I don't know. So then I go like, okay, so boomers, 2000, that was Y2K. And for Zoomers, Taylor Swift was 11, which makes everybody feel old. But anyway, and then I had this weird transition. And the transition was because it's old school. Like, okay, I tried many transitions here to make it like old school. One of them was like the cube rotating. I couldn't do it. It was too hard. But this is from a screenshot from the song Dilemma, which Nelly did with Kelly Rowland, who was from Destiny's Child, who Zoomers don't know who is. But it has this wonderful like scene in it. So if you were a teenager or adultish at the time, you might remember that she is writing a text message in an Excel spreadsheet on her fabulous Nokia phone. And this is something that people who were, in techish things might remember from that time. They go like, oh, that's a long time ago. This was way before the iPhone. So then you get a feeling for when was 2002, right? Then I have another talk, and here I wanted to change people's minds about something, and to do that, I needed to put them in a frame of mind where they had, or what I was trying to do at least, put them in a frame of mind where they remembered, or they've like experienced internally a certain situation, and then I would flip it on them. So this talk is called Deconstructing Privilege. And the first two slides I'm going to show you are the first two slides that I show in that talk. And what I'm trying to do in those slides is evoke memories in each person in the audience of their own experience, and then show them how the same situation could be experienced totally differently by somebody else. So the first one is going to the hairdresser. And so I asked people to try to remember last time they went to the hairdresser, how they experienced it, how sometimes they might be nervous. They don't know how this is going to look in the end. Can they kind of maintain this hairstyle? Things like that. And then I say, for some people, going to the hairdresser can be very traumatic. And then I bring up, okay, so imagine that you are transgender, and you go to the hairdresser as a child, and you are presenting as something that it's not you. So let's say that you were assigned female at birth, and you're coming in, and people all want to do the long hair and the everything, and all you want to do is be yourself, and you just want to cut it all off. So that's one experience that could be very hard for people to be forced to go into that situation and reaffirm something they feel is totally wrong for them. But at the same time, also, you have, especially for trans men, you've had several situations where trans men have been assaulted by the hairdresser because people think that they are going there and trying to cheat the hairdresser because haircuts for men are cheaper than haircuts for women. So both of these situations have caused many trans people to cut each other's hair because they don't want to go into that situation, because for them it is very scary and traumatic. And so this is trying to contrast, how do you, as a cis person or a cis presenting kind of person or passing person, how do you experience a quite ordinary situation, and then contrast that to how it is experienced by somebody else in a different situation. Another example that I have then is planning a vacation, where I asked the audience to imagine, what you think about when you plan a vacation. Like, do you like to go to the beach, or do you travel to a place that has interesting food, or things like that? And then I flip it on them and I say, okay, imagine that you are in a same-sex relationship. Lots of places in the world, it's actually illegal for you to go. They can put you in jail for just traveling with your spouse. And suddenly whole sections of the world are not possible for you to travel to, not for a vacation, and not for business either. And so So what I'm trying to tell you here is that the difference between having a point and having a point is you have an idea, you have something you want to say, you have something you want to communicate. But there's a difference between having a point and telling a story. And the difference there is trying to figure out, how do I tell you what I'm trying to say? And that means I need you to understand me, to understand what I'm trying to say, to get it, to internalize it in your own mind. And that is the struggle I have every time. Like, what is the thing? Like, I have the stuff I want to say, but I also have to have some kind of medium. And that medium is trying to reach the audience. And you kind of have to, and sometimes it's really hard, and it's super, super stressful, because sometimes I just can't get it until, like, I've been working on the talk. I'll have all of the slides, I have everything, but I'm just missing that one thing to, like, it bothers me, and I can get like, oh my God, what if I never get there? But the point is that you are trying to communicate to people. And so it's not enough to just talk, because language is just putting words into the air. You need to make sure it is parsed on the other end. You can't just, like, push it into the air. So this is basically the entire point of my entire thing. The difference between having a point and telling a story is trying to figure out how to tell you what I'm trying to say. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Patricia. That was very interesting.